Let's call the meeting to order. Call the roll.
Ransom Ellis. Brandon Andrews. Cynthia Hyder. Present. Tony Mitchell.
Present.
Randy Phelps. Kevin Hahn.
Present.
Eric Pedersen.
Present.
All right, roll's been called. First order of business is to approve the agenda. Can I hear a motion?
Motion.
Can I hear a second?
Second.
Second. Agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right, agenda's been approved for this meeting. Second point is to approve the minutes for the two previous meetings. This one will be the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting from September 10th, 2018. Can I hear a motion?
Motion.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstain? All right. Minutes approved. Second's the Planning and Zoning Commission workshop on October 9th, 2018. Do I hear a motion?
I like a motion.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstain. All right. Planning and Zoning Commission workshop is from October 9th, 2018 has been approved. Next order of business is meeting procedures. The Planning and Zoning Commission holds public hearings as required by law and provides recommendations to City Council on all matters relating to comprehensive plans, zoning, map amendments, subdivisions, text amendments, special use permits, public infrastructure projects, and other matters affecting land use and development within the city as provided for the city's adopted ordinances and Missouri state statute. Any person who has interest in the subject matter of this hearing will have the opportunity to provide testimony and present evidence to the Planning and Zoning Commission during the public hearing. Each item on the Planning and Zoning Commission agenda is discussed separately in an order presented on the agenda unless amended by the Commission. Speakers are required to conduct themselves in an orderly and respectful manner. Disruptive behavior, including applause, yelling, speaking out of turn, or other inappropriate behaviors will not be tolerated. Additionally, the following applies to any person addressing the Commission. We ask that the speakers limit to 5 minutes, unless authorized additional time by me, the chairman. Speaker must speak at the podium unless previous arrangements have been made by the chairman. I'm assuming that no previous have been arranged. Okay, so all speakers will be speaking at the podium. So please don't speak from the audience. I'm going to give everyone an opportunity to speak. Please just come forward and write legibly, print your name, address on the sign-in sheet at the podium prior to speaking. Speakers must begin by stating their name and address, and speakers should speak clearly into the microphone. The Planning and Zoning Chairman will announce the subject of the hearing, followed by a staff report and presentation by the Community Development Department. The Chairman will then open for public hearing to the applicant, followed by those in favor of the application, and then those opposed of the application. The Chairman will close the public hearing. During this time, the Commission will discuss amongst themselves. The public may not address the Commission after the motion has been closed. After the close of the public hearing, unless requested by the Chairman. The Planning and Zoning Commission shall base their recommendation and/or decision on information and evidence presented during the public hearing. This decision, if required by the application, will be forwarded in writing to the City Council for further consideration. So that's a very important guideline, is that the Planning and Zoning Commission is based on facts and evidence provided. And then we give that recommendation to the City Council. The next City Council meeting is 6:30 on Tuesday, November 27th. It's been moved, so definitely important for anyone that's interested in any of these. I'd like to thank everybody for coming out tonight. It's very good to see citizens that are truly care about what's going on in their city. So the What's that? Oh, okay.
It's important to remember that tonight is the public hearing for everything on the agenda tonight. There will not be a public hearing that's going to be held at the city council. There will be a first read, though, at the city council, where people who are for or against it can also speak at that first read. But as far as the public hearing, that's what we're here for tonight, is the public hearing tonight. So,
Right? That one was for citizen participation. No, okay. Okay, so the first on the agenda is sub 18-003, possible vote to recommend the approval of an application for a preliminary plat Highway 60 Business Center. Important to note that there will be no citizen participation because it is not a public hearing, just an application for a preliminary plat. All right. Ask for the staff presentation at this point.
Thank you, Chairman. So tonight we are reviewing the preliminary plat for Highway 60 Business Center. The applicant is MT Farms, Larry McConnell. So you'll note all of this information is also included in your packet, but here is the vicinity map. So the parcel is approximately 60 acres, and it's on Highway 60 at the intersection of 103, which is right here. So at the northwest intersection of 103 and Highway 60. The applicant has submitted a preliminary plat for approximately 62 acres named the Highway 60 Business Center, consisting of 10 commercial lots. These lots are, this parcel is zoned general commercial. The preliminary plat also includes common area, detention, streets, infrastructure, and direct access to U.S. Highway 60 and South Farm Road 103. In front of you now is the preliminary plat for Highway 60 Business Center, and we'll actually come back to that in just a moment. So for the commission, staff has reviewed the preliminary plat in accordance with the preliminary plat review criteria. The items listed in front of you are the items identified in the ordinance. The preliminary plat will not endanger public health or safety, will not enter the value of adjoining property or abutting property, will be in conformance with the comprehensive plan, the transportation plan, zoning code, water and wastewater system facility plans, and or other official plans adopted by City Council. It should also be in harmony with the area in which it is located. Preliminary plats are first reviewed by the city planner and the city engineer for conformance with these requirements identified in Chapter 410 of the Republic City Code. We also review the comprehensive plan, the land use plan, and other adopted codes and regulations. This particular preliminary plat is actually the third submittal for the proposed project. The first and second preliminary plat submittals were reviewed in accordance with the Chapter 410. They were reviewed in its entirety by the city's technical review team and also engineers at MoDOT. Review letters were sent out to the applicant with notification of deficiencies for both of these submittals. The application before you this evening is the third version of the preliminary plat. The applicant requested at the time of the third submittal for the preliminary plat to be placed on the Planning and Zoning Commission agenda at the earliest time and without consideration of the technical review teams or MoDOT's review. The substance of this preliminary plat is substantially different than the previous two versions. The third submittal also did not include an updated traffic impact study, which was submitted for the first two versions. The preliminary plat was reviewed by the city's technical review team and also MoDOT. A subsequent review letter was sent to the applicant with notification of deficiencies for this particular submittal. Of note, I'll go over these in a little bit more detail, but it was determined to be an incomplete submittal, and it is not in compliance with the requirement of the city's adopted ordinances. So the following list, I'll go over these just very briefly, are the items identified in the review letter to the applicant. Of note, the deficiencies on the required plat. So the secondary circulation system required by the ordinance must be parallel to Highway 60 and located approximately 440 feet from the highway. This intersection of the proposed street intersecting does not appear to meet this requirement. And I actually have an additional exhibit. So as I go through these items, I will try to identify each item. So this is the particular area. So we're talking about this street here, the secondary circulation system, and then the actual intersection with Farm Road 103, which is this road here, that intersection. So this road, the secondary circulation system, needs to be approximately 440 feet from US Highway 60. The second one is the street layout shown on the preliminary plat. It does not conform to the requirements of the adopted major thoroughfare plan identified by the City of Republic and the Ozarks Transportation Organization. You do each have a copy of the OTOS plan on your clipboard. It does identify the secondary circulation system for this particular piece of property, and also a 90-degree angle and intersection with Clara Street and Highway 60. So again, that is this area here. So what that statement actually means is we want all streets, or the plan actually identifies all intersections, to intersect with Highway 60 at a 90-degree angle. So that would alter how this section of 103 sits right now to something more parallel to the lot lines there. So it would be something more like that. The third item, the intersection of the proposed Cora with US Highway 60 must be reviewed and approved by both the City of Republic and the Missouri Department of Transportation. The most recent traffic impact study for this development did not satisfy the requirements for this intersection. Again, this was the second version of the preliminary plat, which is substantially different from this third version of the preliminary plat. Because the preliminary plat has been changed, a revised traffic impact study is needed to determine whether this intersection is in accordance with our approved plans. And just really quickly, I'll identify that for you. So that is this section right here. So the intersection of this street with US Highway 60. Fourth, a traffic impact study, which I just mentioned, is needed to determine what improvements are required at the intersection of Farm Road 103 and US Highway 60. That was that second intersection I pointed out. The preliminary plat has been changed substantially, and a third version of the traffic impact study was not submitted with this preliminary plat. Next on the list, we do have a temporary turnaround requirement at the western northern termination of Clara Street as required by the fire code. Just briefly, that is identified here. So we would require some sort of turnaround, either a hammerhead or a cul-de-sac, to allow fire apparatus equipment to actually make that turn. Locations of fire hydrants do not meet the requirements by the fire code. The water main between Lot 3 and common area detention needs to be extended and connected with existing water mains to create a loop in the system. An additional dedicated easement for sanitary sewer must be submitted on the plat. The city does require for the location of the outlet for the common area or the detention area to be identified. That also will be reviewed by MoDOT. And it's very likely that the engineering of the stormwater management system will require storm sewers and associated inlets within the right-of-way of Clara and Cora Avenue. The preliminary plat actually does not show that, so that would be stormwater system and inlets actually on both this street and this street. And finally, staff's recommendation is the proposed preliminary plat is not in conformance with the requirements of the preliminary plat approval, and we are not recommending approval of this application. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have. I'm going to put this back to the preliminary plat for the applicant.
Does the applicant have a representative that would like to speak?
Okay, my name is Tyler McConnell. I reside at 3456 South Farm Road 101, Brookline, Missouri, 65619. I'm going to kind of go over the 10 list of things we have that was not up to code or by code or however you would like me to refer to it. Okay, so on one, it is that the street is not 440 feet. To my best knowledge, it all is, except for the very farthest east side where the curve is, where it meets 103. So, I think that's about 30, 40 foot long. That's not up to the 440 feet marker. Number two, that thoroughfare plan is a huge, in my opinion, I mean, I don't know when that will actually go through, because if I'm right, doesn't that show where we would kind of stop at our place would end up going over M Highway, or how does that connect into where we are at?
Do you have a slide that shows that?
I do not.
So from my recollection, the only portion of this that does not match the major thoroughfare plan adequately is this here, the intersection, the realignment of 103 with US Highway 60 to 90 degrees. This, and you are correct. So at this point, I don't know if this is the location you're referring to, but this
Yes.
would actually continue parallel to US Highway 60 for probably another potentially half mile towards James River Freeway. Rather than making this movement here and intersecting right here, it would just keep going. This intersection would be realigned from this to this, like that.
Okay, number three is about having the review on our right-in, right-out. We already have a right-in, right-out that we own that's on the MoDOT map. Is that correct? I said that? So we are just going to be asking them for a relocate of approximately 400 to 500 feet from where it actually is now. So it's not something that's completely out of the ballpark, you know, something brand new or nothing. It's just asking for a relocate and an upgrade to meet new standards of the project that we want to do here. Number four, I'm going to let Dane answer. He's way better at that than I am. And then pretty much to sum up the rest of them, number five is the turnaround. I have no problem putting a cul-de-sac in or hammerhead, whichever is preferred by the city. I have no problem doing either one of them. Whatever our issues are with the fire hydrants, I'm not sure what part isn't up to code. We have no problem changing and doing whatever needs to be done for that. And then the same with number 7 and the water line. We can connect those and make a loop system. That's no problem at all. Number 8 was honestly an oversight on our plat and should have been done the first time. And we have no problem doing that. As far as 9 and 10 go, I am not an engineer. I'm not going to sit here and pretend I am. But the gentleman I have doing the plat for me expressed that we kind of need to be in the construction blueprint phase to put in and be right where those need to be, because we do have a lot of water runoff. We're looking at a 60-acre plat right now. There's actually 183 acres on this place, so we have to look at all of that runoff, not just the 60-acre deal, because we do want to eventually develop all 183 acres. So that's a lot of water on farm ground right now, that runs off. So there's a lot that goes into the construction blueprints to find where the water outlet needs to be and where exactly in the roadways we're going to do where the water inlets will be. We are looking at a pretty decent sized retention pond. I can't remember what the final number on it was, but acres. I believe 5+ acres for water retention. So the runoff, we would never have, I believe, have an issue of over too much runoff. We just need to show where it's going to be coming out at. Honestly, that's really all I got, unless there's something I can answer for you or anything. I would just love to see this plat go through so that we can get things started. I mean, this is a huge development for the city, in my opinion. We're looking at 60 acres right now. When you start breaking it down, a Walmart is on 10 acres. So if you take a comparison that we could put six Walmarts on this location. We have had looked at architects look at, and I can't tell from here, my eyes aren't that good, but pretty much on the smallest lot available, we can put a 40,000 square foot strip mall in and have plenty of parking and the greenways that the city asked for and things of that nature. So, I mean, if you can just understand the size and all the different companies we could possibly bring into here, I think it'd be great for the community, for the tax revenue, for the jobs. We want to try to do a lot of family entertainment stuff. When the city sent out the question about how the city's reviews were, a lot of the people that replied wanted family entertainment things and a lack of jobs in the city. And we might be able to do a pretty good job with both of those on the 60 acres alone, plus the next 120 acres we have to do once this phase is complete. I guess that'll be it, unless something else I can help with.
I want to ask to make sure we're clear so that all the commissioners are clear here today. You've talked about many things on this preliminary plat that you say you're in agreement with changing,
Yes.
but they're not on this preliminary plat here today before
No.
the Planning and Zoning Commission.
No.
Are you asking them that this be tabled so you can fix those and submit it back to the Planning and Zoning Commission, or are you asking them to go forward with what's on here today? I just want to make sure we're clear.
Okay, so then yeah, I mean, I'm new to this. I'm not gonna pretend like I'm not. This is my family's farmland. We're not developers, I mean, we farm thousands of acres. We're not commercial property people. I mean, I would like to change them, but also I don't want to have to go through the whole process again. So I guess if I have to do one or the other, then I will ask to go with this plat and not resubmit it. I don't know if I can change those things or have an approval based on if I change those things or how all that works. It's above and beyond me, honestly. But I do not have a problem with changing a bunch of that stuff. I just honestly don't want to go through the process again.
So, Tyler, I recommend, if you are confident that you want to address and change all of the things on the list, my recommendation would be to table consideration, change the things, and then have it reconsidered. But if that's not the case, then my concern for you would be exactly what I think your concern is that you go back through a review and spend the time and the money, and then we end up right back here with still a list, even if it's just a shorter list, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so it goes from 9 to 3, we're still back here in the same boat. So I think that's your concern, and I think you're thinking about it correctly and assessing it correctly. So I guess I'll leave that up to you. If these are all things you want to address before it's actually voted on, then that's what I would do. But if you want to vote on it like it is, then we'll just stick with the vote.
Yeah, I mean, I guess vote on it like it is, because honestly, I think if we can say the biggest issue would be the road and the alignment, which if we were doing the whole intersection, I had no problem. We tried to do a plat that had a realignment to meet with Highway 60 and put a stoplight in. From above higher than me, that was a no-go. from the state. We looked into many different possibilities of intersections to do, and none of them were really in par with what they wanted. So we decided to connect over to 103 instead and try to go this route. So I guess, and I'd rather just vote on it as it sets then.
Did you have additional presentation?
Yeah, I think, Dane, did you have one you wanted to go over? Yeah. All right, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Dane Seiler, 5051 South National, Suite 7A in Springfield, Missouri. Tyler asked me, he's asked us to look at the traffic for the development, and that's what we've been assisting him on at this particular development. We, of course, have conducted the two traffic studies that have been done already on the issue. Sorry, now you get my direct attention. Now I'm done writing. So we looked at we of course looked at the traffic that this potential development could generate. One of the challenges with a development like this is just the unknowns out there of trying to predict what's going to be on a piece of property of this size and scope. So one thing you wanted me to address was the right in, right out, because it was shown in the previous traffic study that it would fail effectively, and honestly it will, and a lot of that is, and you all can probably understand this pretty easily. I mean, there's so much that's in the PM peak hour in the evening when we showed that it would fail. So in that time when everybody's coming home from Springfield to Republic, you can imagine there's a lot of traffic out there on US Highway 60. So with our right in, right out coming out of this development being on the north side of 60, there's just a ton of traffic coming down through there. So it's going to be a challenge for any amount of traffic to take a right out of the development, especially in the PM peak hour, which is typically what we look at. The other thing that we looked at, of course, was Tyler kind of alluded to it. We looked at a lot of options at Farm Road 103 and US 60. We started out with a traffic signal, and we're asked to look at some additional options there. We looked at a roundabout at that intersection. We also looked at J-turns at that intersection, which is a concept where the lefts are further down from the intersection, kind of split. Again, primarily because of that PM peak hour traffic that I just mentioned that makes it such a struggle for the right in, right out to work. It made it hard for those two types of intersections to work at this location too. We arrived back at a traffic signal kind of in the second rendition of the study, and that's kind of we're still, of course, working with the DOT to figure out what exactly they want to see at the intersection as far as in that traffic signal, as far as turn lanes, or even if a traffic signal is the ultimate thing. We're kind of out of ideas as far as what to do at that particular intersection to handle the traffic, just because the traffic signal is really the big answer, but it does, of course, create another stop possibly for folks that are moving along 60. So those are kind of the two items that Tyler wanted me to kind of go over and discuss with you all. So I'd be happy to answer any questions related to traffic that I could if you have any. So.
I guess on the legal side, I have one question.
Yeah.
This preliminary plat that was submitted here today, did you do a traffic study on this preliminary plat?
I did not. Well, the first traffic study kind of was on that plat, but the second traffic study wasn't. So I guess yes, but not the most current traffic study is not on that plat. So sorry, that was kind of convoluted there, but the first plat was very similar to that layout.
But not this plat, though, correct?
Correct.
Do you guys have? I'm sorry. Does the commission have any questions?
I have one question. If you knew the ordinance of the city, why didn't you make a 90-degree intersection on that 103?
I think so. A couple of challenges. Tyler might be able to answer that a little bit better, but just in my conversations with him, one of the there's several challenges to that 103 intersection when it comes to making it a 90. Not that they can't be overcome. One of them is the south side trying to get it to line up with the south side then of the intersection. There'll be probably right of way that will need to be acquired to get it to realign on the south side and make it work correctly. Another issue is as you kind of shift that intersection, and as we kind of looked at shifting that intersection, the 2 lanes of 60 actually vertically start to separate from one another as you go west. So the more you kind of try to realign that entire intersection and shift it west, there becomes a vertical challenge to make up the difference. Not that those things I don't think can be overcome, but some of those things make it a little bit more challenged to make it a 90 at this intersection than others. So.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Does anybody else have any questions for this gentleman?
All right. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you. Any other questions for the city?
Just additional.
Yes, go ahead.
Just as a follow-up to add some clarity here, so everything that was provided then in testimony by Tyler and Dana, that's all factual, relevant information. So I just want to provide some feedback and some clarity to that. That there is a right-in, right-out access on the property now that could be potentially shifted is true. That's an accurate statement that was made. However, this preliminary plat would be upgrading that from just what is in essence a driveway to now a public street. And MoDOT will not allow the public street intersection to become a reality unless the city, who would own and maintain that public street, would first make that request or approve that request by approving this preliminary plat. So that information is accurate, but we're going one step further from just, what is a direct access to the highway to now making it a full-blown public street, and that is something that can only happen through this vehicle of the preliminary plat. And as was mentioned, at least the most up-to-date data that we have on that particular intersection would be that it would provide a failing level of service in the PM peak hour, which is when there is the most traffic. That being important because if you start off with a failing level of service, it's obviously not going to get better after that. Traffic on Highway 60 is probably only going to grow over time. So you start from what is a very bad situation that is likely only going to get worse, and there's safety concerns relating to that. Of course, one of our responsibilities is to make sure that we don't allow through this process something that would become a potential hazard. The other thing I wanted to address, Tyler mentioned that some of the stormwater engineering could be potentially deferred until a later stage of the development process. I actually think that's reasonable. The comment, that particular comment was not meant to be that we wanted them to do that design now, just was more of the both of them you mentioned at the end, the 9 and 10, those are sort of more of a heads up. You will need to address these more than this must appear on the preliminary plat. So just wanted to provide some clarity there, and just to give some context, and I think Dan addressed a lot of this very well, is that the particular issues that we see here are, in some ways larger than just the 60 acres. Part of what Dane was describing is the challenges are very challenging because US Highway 60 does carry so much traffic, and the city recognizes that this situation is partly, those challenges exist because of that traffic that's already there. And so what we have done in response to that is, because like I said, that's an issue that's bigger than just this 160-acre tract, is we've requested the Ozarks Transportation Organization is a regional transportation group that helps MoDOT to prioritize how federal transportation funding gets spent in our area. We have requested that they make as a priority to study this entire stretch of US Highway 60 so that we can provide some of the answers to some of the challenges that are causing us to recommend the denial of this plat now, because those challenges aren't going to go away whether this plat gets approved, denied, whatever. So we've asked them to make that a priority, and so that group has voted to make that a top priority moving forward, is to conduct that study, which we hope will be going on very soon. That will hopefully put us in a much better position for not only this particular development, but all of the other potential development along this stretch of highway that when we approach these challenges, that we're in a much better position to find what those solutions are and feel confident that those are going to be worthwhile and safe solutions that will be durable, long-lasting, and efficient. Because given the amount of traffic that this carries, what we don't want to do is make a hasty decision with poor levels of service and cause what would be not just a huge impact on commutes for the residents of our particular community, but also a lot of communities, both east and west of Republic, that are using this corridor to get back and forth from work and to make purchases, whatever that person. I mean, this 30,000 cars a day. Those aren't just all residents of Republic. It's a major transportation corridor that we're dealing with here. So we are sensitive to it, and like Dane said, the challenges are great. They can be overcome, and that's one of the things we got to figure out how to overcome them. And I believe we've got what is developing into a pretty good plan to try to address those. But for this particular preliminary plat, they are not addressed yet, and that is why staff is recommending against the approval of this preliminary plat, because we're not in a position to say that this works and is going to be a good solution.
Does any commissioners have additional questions for the city development staff? Does anyone else wish to come and speak in opposition of the application? All right. Now I'm going to close the hearing. Does the commission have any additional comment before we move to a vote? Do I hear a motion to move to a vote?
Motion.
Do I hear a second? Second.
Just to clarify, all the motions of the commission have to be in the affirmative. So if we could get the motion to, we always write it on here in the affirmative, so you could just, I just want to clarify that the motion in this particular one is to recommend the approval of the application.
I don't want to approve the application. Okay. I recommend to affirm the.
Do I hear a second? Call for the vote, please.
Brandon Andrews,
Nay.
Eric Peterson,
Nay.
Cynthia Hyder, Kevin Hahn,
Nay.
Tony Mitchell.
Motion does not pass. Give you guys an opportunity to put loose here for just that piece of the meeting. We'll move on to the second hearing of the agenda. SU 18-001, public hearing and possible vote to recommend the approval of an application for a special use permit for a real estate office in a residential zoning district located at 1101 East Elm Street. Yield to the community staff.
Thank you. So the application before you this evening is for a special use permit. The applicant is Alex James Clark and Marcia Diane Clark. Again, this is for a very specific use for a real estate office located at 1101 East Elm. So the property in question is at the intersection of Elm Street and Lynn. Lynn is running north and south. It's indicated in purple in the vicinity map. A few photos. So the view from across Elm Street. This is the south looking north. Intersection of Elm Street and Lynn Avenue. You can see just the home on that particular parcel. The parcel itself is approximately 0.5 acres. View from across Lynn Avenue. That's looking east into the home. The detached garage is located right here. So this is a view into the detached garage from Lynn Avenue. And just several other photos. This is the intersection of Lynn and Elm Street right here. A closer view of the attached garage and then the parking spaces that are currently available at that location. And then just another street view. So the second map is the zoning map. You can see that the entire area in question is yellow, which is indicated as medium density single family residential. Again, the property in question is on East Elm Street. It is currently zoned medium density single family residential. This is not a rezoning application. They are not asking to actually rezone the property, but instead for a permit to operate a very specific use out of the current structure. So that would be the single family residential dwelling and accessory structure. The proposed use is for a real estate office for the Clarks. The applicant's special use permit, again, is for a very specific use, the real estate office. The special use ordinance does allow for an administrative office, such as a real estate business office. They have also requested 2 business signs, one fronting on each street, not to exceed 9 square feet in area. And I do have a depiction of those signs following. So as far as compatibility with the city's special use ordinance, section 405-670 of City Code does allow for commercial offices and residential districts which are associated with low volume traffic, such as accounting, architecture, drafting, engineering, law, and associated professional consulting services. So that is the very specific language under the special use permit for those types of administrative offices allowed by means of this section. So as far as compatibility with the sign ordinance, we also did review that. The city's sign ordinance for residential areas allows for 1 on-premise detached sign not to exceed 5 square feet in effective area and 4 feet in height. I point this out, it is a little bit different from what the applicant is actually requesting. This section of the sign code would be applicable to like home occupations, different uses in a residential structure in a residential zoning district. Items like wall signs, flashing lights, and animation are not allowed at all in residential districts. So this may be a little bit difficult to see, but this is the depiction of the actual signage that the applicant is requesting. And then actually a better schematic showing the sign and the post and the overall height. And then in the very last photo, he's requesting a sign approximately right there and then also right there. So 1 on Elm Street and 1 on Lynn Street, not to exceed 9 square feet in effective area. So as far as the discussion and analysis that staff has performed for this particular application, the site is currently served by City of Republic Water and Sanitary Sewer Services. The approval of the special use permit for the real estate office specifically will require no new connections or any alteration to the existing connections of water and sewer. We also evaluate the environmental concerns. There are no floodplains or sinkholes that have been identified for this particular property. Transportation on this one is a big item. So the subject parcel is currently accessible for residential purposes from the access point in front of the detached garage on North Lynn Avenue. We may require additional reviews or driveway improvements or off-street parking if the applicant requests that or if it's needed for parking for the business. Elm Street itself from Main Street or State Highway P all the way east to the city of Battlefield is designated by OTO as a secondary arterial. They feed traffic to those primary arterial systems and are intended for moderate volume, moderate speed traffic. access to abutting properties is a secondary function. There will be no additional new access to this particular parcel. So moving into the specifics regarding traffic, the city's Public Works Department studied the traffic on Lynn Avenue and also East Elm Street in the vicinity of 1101 East Elm Street back in September of this year. They did this to determine the current traffic volumes on both roads. So we have traffic counts provided by our city engineer. So the volume of traffic on Lynn Avenue is approximately 4,027 trips. And then also on Elm Street at 5,300 approximately daily trips. The one item I want to point out with the volume of these trips, all of our classifications of road systems are assigned a particular volume in which they can operate efficiently, and the volume for a secondary arterial is between 3,000 and 13,000 daily trips. So you can see the volume of both roads are well within what is allowed for a secondary arterial. The next item I want to discuss very briefly is the actual impact on the transportation network. Again, our city engineer evaluated the trip generation that might occur for this type of use at this particular location. So this is an engineering standard. It's called the Institute of Transportation Engineers Trip Generation Manual. What this manual does is it looks at various land uses and associated number of trips generated by each of those uses. So the city engineer has identified the trip generation for a small office, a small professional office, up to 1,500 square feet to be approximately 26 trips per day. So up to 26 trips per day. I also included just the trip generation for a residential single-family dwelling is approximately 10 trips per day. So for this particular use, the current structure is less than 1,500 square feet. We further defined what a small professional office would be, which would actually be less than 5,000 square feet. So through this comparison, we determined that the addition of 26 trips per day for this type of professional office essentially doesn't have an effect on the traffic on both Lynn Avenue and Elm Street. Standard items of discussion. Again, this application was reviewed by the technical review team. All developments, including any type of site design for emergency access, if needed, would be evaluated at the time of application. The development itself must always adhere to the city's adopted plans and ordinances. If any changes are applied for by the applicant to the actual physical structure, such as a change of use, or if he decides he needs additional parking required for the business, then that would be evaluated by staff administratively. And finally, staff does consider the proposed special use request for a real estate office in a residential zoning district located at 1101 East Elm Street to be generally consistent with the city's special use permit ordinance and able to be adequately served by the city's transportation network and the city's municipal utilities. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, Mr. Tyson.
I know we've got several new commissioners and a lot of people in the audience, so I just want to add some clarity because those of you who were at the prior commission meeting, or maybe it was one before that, this same property was under consideration for a rezone request. So I want to make sure everybody's clear on the distinction between the rezone request and a special use permit request. If a special use permit, if approved and issued by the city, is a permit that's issued to an applicant for a specific use, unlike zoning where it's applied to the property and runs with the land until it's rezoned and it allows for a range of uses. A special use permit is issued to an applicant for a particular property and it cannot be transferred. So if the applicant ceases that particular use, that one single use that the special use permit authorizes it, then that's it, it's done. And the permit expires. If the applicant moves and no longer owns the property. The special use permit is, the ordinance is also written such that it expires at that time too. So there's some important differences I want to point out between special use permits and zoning. One being permanent in running with the land, the other being issued just to the applicant and does eventually expire. One being for a wide range of uses, the other one being for just one particular use.
Does any commissioner have any questions for the staff?
How many special use permits are issued right now in the city?
That is a excellent question. We have not had any issues this year. I believe we had a total of, I want to say 1 last year.
Since we've had zoning since 1968, and I think we have issued in that time, I don't recall the exact number, but I think it's less than 30 special use permits. And some of those issued early on are likely to have expired. So the number of currently operating special use permits would probably be no more than a couple dozen.
How specific does the special use permit have to be?
It can be, so, I guess the answer is, there's no.
I mean, can it just be an office, or can it be,
Okay,
or
I
does
see
it
what you're
have to
saying.
be
Is it specific?
It
this
is,
business,
yeah.
only this business, and so on?
There are 13 categories that you can ask for a special use permit for. The special use permit category being asked for in this case is an enumerated category, and it includes basically professional offices. So in this case, that category could include, I think, a lawyer, a real estate,
I remember, thank you.
maybe a minister. So all like single office type of situation. And typically, Scott can clarify, what we've done in the past was it was actually council would narrowly tailor it to just one of those. It's hard to know what this council would want to do, but in the past that has been what has happened.
It's important to remember, just because you see this application in front of you, you guys can make amendments to it if you wanted to. You can make a motion to amend. If you think it needs to be more specific, you can always make a motion to amend it more specific. Any motion you want to make to it can pretty much be allowed. Same thing in city council. If they believe certain stuff needs to be added to it, they can put conditions on it for it to be approved by the council. So.
In fact, one of the items for consideration might be the applicant's request for the 2 business signs. That was actually part of his application. We did reference what the city would allow at this particular location with our sign ordinance currently in effect. So you could add language for that if you would like. You could also add any type of other specific language that you would like to see included in the ordinance.
Thank you.
Does anybody else have any questions for the city?
You said it has moderate traffic. Is that different from low volume traffic? And if so, how different?
The moderate volume that I referred to is actually on secondary arterials. So secondary arterials are able to carry that moderate volume of traffic. So between the 3,000 to 13,000 for a secondary arterial. Where we described the low volume, which was allowed per the ordinance for administrative type offices, we would consider the trips generated for this type of office at up to 26 to be low volume.
The other thing that I might have failed to mention on amendments is, since you do submit your recommendation to the city council, You can also put in your recommendations if you approve it, but you can also put in there that you would like to see certain changes also for the city council to take into account also. I believe the applicant is here today, so if there are any amendments that wish to be proposed today by the commissioners, I'm sure he'd be more than willing to hear those amendments and possibly agree to those here today also. If you want to make any oral amendments to it today, other than just a written recommendation, so.
The special permit, does that special permit include employees, staff, anybody that would be working in that structure? Or?
As far as
So is there a limit to how many employees that he would be able to employ? I'm sure he'll get up and tell us how many employees he has, but if he said, no, I've decided I'm going to have 20 employees, I'm going to have 20 staff, I'm assuming that special permit.
that could be something that you could consider limiting. One of the major factors for limitation, as the site currently exists, is going to be the availability of parking. I believe it's the intention of the applicant to use the existing parking in the garage and then the spaces in front of the garage. He will be required to have, I think it's going to be approximately 3 to 4 parking spaces based on the square footage of the space itself. So that computation for parking is going to allow for approximately what is already there. Additional considerations would definitely have to be reviewed. If he were to have 20 employees, he would need that many parking spaces, which poses a few challenges.
Do we know exactly how many parking spots he has right now?
He would have at least 4, and then he also has a turnaround area, which is indicated right here in the lower right. So here's the detached garage. He's got parking in there, parking in front of that garage. And this is approximately the size of a parking space, maybe a little bit smaller, where you can actually back into and then turn out onto Lynn, so that you don't have to back directly out onto Lynn Avenue.
Thank you. Does any of the commissioners have any questions for the city? All right. I'd like to open the public hearing. I'd ask that the public in favor of the application speak first. Welcome you to the podium.
Good evening, Commission. Excuse me. My name is Alex Clark, and I'm the current owner of 1101 East Elm Street, the subject property. So basically bringing back the special use permit after we had considered an initial zoning request that we presented, I believe, in September to the board. This at the time, I didn't know this was a valid option basically for the property. So I think we had some concerns that came up in the last meeting, and so those were valid concerns, and I think that moving forward, this special use permit limits the property and the intended uses that I would be able to use it for. As you've been discussing, there was some concern about what would happen to it if I sold it down the road or something like that. So like I said, this special use permit, I understand, ends with me, and that the property would go back residential if I chose to sell it or demised or something along those lines. Still my intent for the property has not changed. Like I said, I think this better suits the need for the property. It protects the neighborhood. It protects the area around it. My intent is not to make this a bustling real estate office. I'm associated with Better Homes and Gardens Real Estate, which is here in town with its own suite in a business suite setting. I've been an active broker in Republic since 2005. Predominantly, most of my business is from my home, which is just outside the city limits of Republic. So if I
I was living in this house, I wouldn't even need to apply for the special use permit. I could just have an office in my home. And so that's my intent with this property, is just to basically work from it. I don't intend to employ a lot of employees out of that. I have an administrative assistant that works for me on a full-time basis pretty much. It would be me and her and possibly one or two other people, but I would be, again, limited by that parking. I don't intend a lot of foot traffic in and out of the property. It's more so for my convenience and my family's convenience and stuff like that. I've operated my business from my home, like I said, in Republic since 2005. I don't ever recall having a client out to my house. I've usually conducted that business either with Better Homes or Gardens, or if you've bought and sold a home anytime in the recent history, I go to my clients' homes a lot, so my services are taken out to them. Occasionally somebody could drop by and sign a contract or something along those lines, but I'm not looking for that foot traffic. It's more about taking it out of my primary residence and putting it into this property, which I think fits who I am as a business person and in the real estate business that I'm in. And like I said, my biggest thing is that this is a great house. I love the property. I'm in the process of restoring it, so hopefully everybody's had the chance to go by the property and see how the property's been improved in the last few months. There's a brand new roof, new electrical system. I've brought the house up to a modern code and standard, and I've enjoyed every piece of it. The idea that I have for the property is that right now my 6-year-old and my 2-year-old don't understand that when Dad's in the office working, why he can't go ride four-wheelers or motorcycles or something with them. And so that separation of business and office is going to help me and my family in that regard. So like I said, that's what I'd like to speak to and let everybody understand. A little bit of language in the request that I submitted was the 9 square footage of the sign. I did include the post. When I was reading the sign ordinance, it wasn't real clear if the post that the sign actually hung on was part of that, so I just erred on the side of caution. The sign itself, I think the dimensions are closer to that 5 or 6 square foot mark on that. Like I said, I took into consideration the full length and height of the thing, and I think you can see that in the exhibit. And then my intent to use the office or property, hopefully you saw a letter that I submitted to the city with that intent. Like I said, it is basically anything dealing with real property. So yes, I'm a real estate agent, but I'm also a property manager, a construction supervisor. So but it all ties back to what I do as an occupation, and that is, facilitate real estate transactions. So like I said, I help people with, rehabbing a project or something like that. None of that is on site. It's all off site. But those kind of administrative type things would be involved in the property and the use for it. And I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Questions?
You said you had other businesses. Would that involve construction trucks, construction personnel, stuff like that?
No.
I mean, obviously bigger vehicles, trucks, and stuff like that would be a concern on that road. So.
No, nothing from that facility at all. Like I said, most of it is all, I don't have any construction employees. Like I said, I do have ownership in a construction company that I used to run and manage, but most of that is dwindled away to nothing. It's just a matter of, I have subcontractors that I might hire for a client or a customer, refer a roofer to somebody that needs to get their roof replaced or something like that. So it's more on administrative type of things. I still own a small service truck that when I'm out there working, I bring with me, just because it's got my tools and stuff on it, but it's a Ford Ranger. So there's no big equipment or anything like that would be in and out of the property at all.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant?
How many employees work in the house?
Right now, it would just be myself and possibly 2 others, and those are not even full-time hours. One would be close to full-time, and one would be just as needed basis. So I use somebody I have an administrative person that helps me with keeping bank accounts and that kind of stuff and helping me with contracts. I have another person that comes in and works a few hours doing social media and that kind of stuff.
Mr. Clark, would you be open to an amendment to put a cap on the amount of employees that you would be allowed to have in the house?
Sure, if the parking doesn't suffice for that limitation, yeah, I would be fine to amend that. I mean, it's a small. It looks bigger in stature than it really is. Like I said, it's basically it would be very limited. I don't know, like I said, a number. Like I said, we just have to see what we could work out. But yeah, I don't see anything over. Definitely wouldn't be 5 or 6 people there.
Okay.
Just so we're clear moving forward, 5 or 6 or more. Just so we
Whatever
know,
I would be open to hearing what the commission would suggest. Like I said, I couldn't imagine it being feasible to have more than 6 people there at one time employed. That's
Okay.
That's extreme in my circumstance.
Does anybody else have any questions for the applicant?
And I'd be open to less than that if that's what you tell me.
Understand. If there's no other questions,
Thank you very much.
was there any other public comment in favor of the application? Is there public comment opposed to the application?
My name is George North, and I live at 733 West O'Neill Road, Republic, Missouri. And as a former council member, we had several special use permits requested. I think somewhere in the total of 6 or 7 during my time. And during that time, they were from mostly, if not all, were for daycare centers operated out of residence. And there's very little noticeable impact in that with the daycare operation, because outside of slight traffic increase, maybe the kids being a little noisy in the yard, whereas this application here is requesting a signage. The signage does not agree with the neighborhood, and it could be obstruct traffic views. There's a bush on the corner of that property right now that is somewhat doing that. And therefore, I would be against it.
Does anybody have any questions for Mr. North?
If I could speak to the signage, whenever we talked, and the reason the request was for 2, I didn't.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll reserve the right to ask questions. Do you have any of those, Mr. North? All right. Thank you very much. Is there any other public comment opposed to the application represented today?
My name is Cecilia Barr. I live at 127 Northland Avenue, which is catty corner to the property. I've lived there for 24 years. I've raised 2 children in the neighborhood. It is a residential neighborhood. It is not commercial at all. As far as I know, he's made changes, and I appreciate that. But, I mean, once this is changed into a commercial property, I have a hard time seeing that if he decides to move, change, that someone would want this place as a residence again. With signage, he can make an appeal to, for different parking. I don't know if that would involve the citizens around that area if he decides that he needs to change the parking situation. It wasn't really addressed that I heard, that if he does need more parking, he could come to the planning and zoning and get that accomplished. I don't know. Again, I don't know anyone who would, if he does, make a parking lot, tear down the garage, whatever, who would want that property as a residential property again. So I'm just afraid that if this does go further or forward, that it will alter the neighborhood forever, that we can't get it back to what it is.
So, Okay, fair enough. I'm going to ask some questions of the city just to possibly clarify.
Okay.
Special use permit does not. Okay, so in your PowerPoint, you mentioned something about off-street parking or additional parking that he may have to add.
Correct. So if he were to request any additional parking spaces, we would consider that to be off-street parking. That would be evaluated through a permit with the Community Development Department. So that would be an administrative review for additional impervious area.
And it has zero relevance to the special permit that we'd be possibly voting on today. Like him receiving this special permit does not allow him to do that. That's an additional permit.
That would be an administrative review. You might be able to add on some language regarding the addition of parking spaces if that's something the commission would want to review.
If the commission thinks that's a important issue or a relevant issue, because Karen's right, if you wanted to widen your driveway at your house, you don't have to come and ask the commission for, so same way a commercial business doesn't have to come ask the commission to have a couple more parking spots. But if you felt, or if the commission concludes that that's a relevant issue in this case, the special use permit could be tailored such that it's limited to the existing parking and none additional can be added, or if additional is going to be added, it must look a certain way. And Karen and I can help you craft that if that's the direction that the commission would like to head.
If that was just kept as residential, though, you could add extra parking for RV parking or something like that if you wanted to as well, right?
Yep.
Is there any other questions?
You're not changing the zoning, so it's technically not commercial.
Correct. The zoning will remain the same. So the zoning will remain medium density, single family. This is not a rezoning. It's a very specific permit for a specific use issued to a specific person. So just for a real estate office issued to Mr. Clark with any conditions you feel may be relevant.
Is there any other questions? Is there any more public comment opposed to the application that like to be represented today? Does the commissioners have any other questions for any of the speakers today? At this point, I'm going to close the hearing. Is there any comments from the commissioners?
So there's no changes that need to be made to the parking. Like, he doesn't have to put like a parking lot in.
He does not, no. We will evaluate that. He will likely, he may need some permits in order to make renovations. We would evaluate the parking based off the square footage of the area of the structure at that time. But that would be an administrative review to ensure that he would meet the parking requirements for a small professional office.
And the signs are within the ordinances.
The sign, I'll go back to the actual, so this is the depiction that he has presented as part of his application. I think that says 4 feet, although I can't read it from here. It does. Okay.
48 inches.
Okay, 48 inches. So you'll see the style and the type of sign. The narrative included a maximum of 9 square feet in effective area. The city's sign ordinance, so if you were permitted for a home occupation in a residential zoning district, this would be the requirement for any type of sign. So you could have one on-premise detached sign. So an on-premise detached sign would be an example of what he has indicated as part of his application. But the additional requirement in that is for that effective area of that detached sign not to exceed 5 square feet in area. So you could have one detached sign not to exceed 5 square feet, and then it can't include any of the, it can't include another wall sign, and it also can't include any type of the flashing lights or animation.
Is there a requirement by the city on where those signs can be placed?
There will be, yes, and that would actually be an administrative review. So he will have to, the applicant will have to get a sign permit for the location of any type of sign. So we will evaluate that at the time of application. So part of that review, it has to be out of sight triangles. It does have to be a certain distance off of the property lines, and then we'll make sure that the effective area and the height of the sign is within the regulations. This is a requirement only for home occupations in residential zoning districts. So because he has asked for something different, you can definitely consider that, and you can also include parameters for what you feel is appropriate for signage at that location.
So just to provide some comparison, right now at your house, you could put up a sign, and it could be 5 square feet effective area, and you could have one. And I think that's probably the key difference here, is the request from the applicant, that signage, if you calculated the area according to how the code says you can calculate it, I think it would be slightly larger than 5 square feet. But that would be, to me, a very small difference. Nobody would typically notice on site. However, the code in residential areas says you can only have one. The applicant in this case is requesting two. So to me, that is probably the bigger difference between what would be allowed now versus what would be allowed if the permit is approved with this request. Is instead of one, there would be two. That being said, when staff's looking at the request, typically our sign code applies to most signage is of course commercial. Typically signage is allowed one per street frontage. So our sign code doesn't do a good job of necessarily considering what if it's a corner lot and it has two frontages.
It's a unique situation.
So it's a little bit of a unique situation, but regardless, the sign code does limit it to just one. This request is for two, and just like I said, slightly larger than that 5 square feet in effective area.
Thank you.
Is there any other questions or comments? Do I hear a motion?
I would make a motion to recommend approval of this.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
So just for the sake of clarity, if I'm like, Tony, does your motion include approval of the special use permit as requested by the applicant, including the signage?
Yes.
That was requested. Okay. And your second to that motion?
Correct.
Call for the vote, please.
Eric Pedersen,
4.
Tony Mitchell,
Aye.
Kevin Hahn,
Aye.
Brandon Andrews,
Aye.
Cynthia Hyder.
Bruce. Give you guys an opportunity if you wanted to. Exit, yeah. All right, at this time, we're going to move to our third hearing of the night. It is PDD 18-003, public hearing and possible vote to recommend the approval of an East Miller Road from medium-density, single-family residential, R1-M, to Planned Development District, PDD.
Connie, could you cue the PowerPoint? Thank you, Chairman. So this application is a rezoning request. It's for a planned development district identified as 18-003. The applicant is David Gibbs and Merrick Development. The zoning request is to change the zoning designation from medium-density single-family residential, or R1M, to planned development district. The first slide in front of you is the vicinity map. So this is located at 139 East Miller Road. It is directly east of the intersection of Miller Road running east and west and Main Street running north and south. The zoning map is up next. The area in question is purple. The area surrounding it, designated in yellow, is the medium-density single-family residential zoning district. So the parcel is currently surrounded by parcels zoned same as the property in question. And then I've also included the future land use map. We'll talk more about this in detail in just a moment. But the designation of this parcel and the surrounding parcels in beige is low-density residential. A few photos. This particular photo is looking west towards the intersection of Main Street. The subject property is to the north of Miller, so off to the right in this photo. The same, just viewing the other direction towards the community center or east. This is looking northeast into the property from Miller Road. You can see the home is in white here, surrounded by large trees. And then opposite, looking northwest from Miller sidewalk. Moving into the discussion and analysis, again, the property is located on East Miller Road. The current zoning designation is medium-density single-family residential. The flume designation is the low-density residential. And just for reference on the low-density residential, it does include single-family residential development at 1 to 6 dwelling units per acre. So the low-density flume designation does include the following 3 zoning districts. So it does include the R1L or low density, the R1M, which is the subject property. This one is 1 to 5 dwelling units per acre for density, and then also the high density single family residential at 1 to 6 dwelling units per acre. When staff and the technical review team reviewed this particular application, we did review it for compliance with the recently adopted plan development regulations. I'm not going to go through these in details, but they were included in your packet and are referenced in your notebooks. The objective for the plan development district is to provide a somewhat of a customized zoning district to allow innovative arrangements of land and public facilities, which would be difficult to accomplish under the conventional land use designations and development regulations for the city. And there are several requirements that we go through to ensure the application itself is eligible for a plan development district review. The next item we'll discuss is the consistency with the comprehensive plan. So generally speaking, the comprehensive plan encourages the expansion of residential development through proactive rezoning requests at appropriate locations. These appropriate locations are described in relationship of the particular parcel and then the infrastructure capable of supporting that particular land use. So, for instance, the transportation systems of the city and also water, sewer, and stormwater capabilities. The plan also more particularly describes appropriate future land uses through the depiction of that future land use map that was indicated in beige. In this particular case, the flume does designate this property as having that low density residential, which would include the low density, the medium density, and then the high density zoning designations. The city's adopted 2005 land use plan again, it identifies this low density as 1 to 6 dwelling units per acre. So that's the density allowed for this particular zoning application. Moving into the applicant's actual request, I'll show you an actual depiction of the request, but these are some of the items included in that request. So we have a buffer yard along the perimeter of the property, so all 4 sides. That it consists of a 20-foot buffer with a minimum of 36-inch berm with ornamental trees, evergreen shrubs, and various grasses. It does include stormwater detention for the development. It includes residential structures, so 4 4-unit residential buildings totaling 16 residential units, 4 6-unit residential buildings totaling 24 for a total of 40 residential units. And then I have also provided the mix that was provided in the application, so 20 one-bedroom units and then 20 two-bedroom units. The existing structures on the parcel, which include the old white farmhouse and then a couple of detached accessory structures, the applicant does intend to repurpose those particular structures for this development. The application does also include sidewalks, so internal sidewalks, and then that direct connection to existing sidewalks on East Miller Road. Parking, the application has included 1 parking space for each dwelling unit, and then an additional 4 parking spaces for the development's community building. The community building is the referenced repurposing of the existing farmhouse. And then finally, the application does include a deed restriction. So this deed restriction, which we'll talk about just in just a few minutes, is for the development to house individuals 55 years of age and older. So this is the architectural rendering of the proposed development. You can see this is the subject 5 acres in Miller Street, so 1 direct connection at approximately the same location as the existing driveway, a looped internal area for the development. There's parking in front of each of the residential buildings, and then in gray, and it may be a little difficult to see, but the gray is actually the footprint of the 4 and 6 unit structures. And then the square right here is the existing farmhouse with an existing accessory structure behind there, which will be repurposed. So the land use plan and the land use goals and objectives relating to commercial development. There are several goals and priorities and policies that are identified in this plan that are relatable to this particular development. So we have, first up, housing development, supply and demand. This is addressed in the land use plan. Housing development has been and will continue to be an important element of the city's overall growth and development. A wide range of adequate housing available for people of all income levels and ages is necessary to support the city's growth. So there are a couple items under that we want to, or the plan identifies the encouragement of development of infill housing. We would consider this infill development within that 5 acres. Moving on, we have also a goal of the land use plan is to improve the quality of all types of housing in the city, to encourage development of high-quality housing regardless of the size, type, and density of housing being constructed. And I won't go through each policy, but that was provided, those policies were provided in your packet for reference. So moving on, we also reviewed the compatibility with surrounding land uses. Again, this particular site is surrounded by single-family homes in the medium-density single-family or R1M zoning district, all 4 sides. The land uses permitted with the applicant's proposal are considered to be generally compatible with the surrounding residential zone properties and uses in direct proximity to this particular parcel. We also evaluated as part of the application review municipal water and sewer service availability to the site. The site is currently served by City of Republic water and sanitary sewer services. Of course, the actual development of the property into 40 residential units will include upgrades to those particular systems. So I've included just the technical review. There's a 12-inch water main running along Miller Road. There is sufficient flow and capacity on that particular water line to serve the proposed development. And then there are also a couple of options for the sanitary sewer main on Miller Road. They are requesting, as part of this application, to connect to the easternmost manhole, which flows directly to Schuler Creek Lift Station. That lift station has been evaluated and does have sufficient capacity to serve this particular development. And finally, on transportation, Miller Road itself, first of all, we'll go through the road classification. It is a collector from Main Street or State Highway P all the way east to State Highway Z. This is identified in the major thoroughfare plan adopted by OTO in the City of Republic. What a collector does is it functions as a collection and distribution system for traffic to and from both the local road systems and also the arterial systems. So for instance, State Highway P all the way up to Highway 60. And collectors do carry volumes of traffic that are moderate, typically low speed and shorter trips. The traffic volume on Miller Road in the vicinity of the subject parcel is identified as right around 1,800 daily trips. So our city engineer did perform a traffic count in preparation for the review of this application. So right around 1,800 daily trips. The range for what is appropriate for a collector ranges anywhere from 1,100 to 6,300 daily trips. So that's the functional capability of a collector. The impact on the transportation network was evaluated. Again, we go back to the trip generation standards provided by the Institute of Transportation Engineers manual. This manual describes standard uses and associated number of trips generated by each use. There is a definition specifically for this type of use. It's a definition for senior adult housing, and it does include senior living independent living developments, including retirement communities, age-restricted housing, and adult active communities. The city engineer did review the proposal, which included a very short report generated by CJW that indicated for this particular use for an age-restricted development, it will generate approximately 148 trips a day. So this was provided by CJW as part of the application and then reviewed by the city engineer. Environmental review, again, this property doesn't contain any identified floodplain. It also does not contain any sinkholes. The property as it's currently zoned, a potential developer could approach the city and preliminary plat this particular parcel. So no rezoning would be required. You would see something very similar to our first case, showing configuration of lots, infrastructure, and streets for residential lots. So someone could come before the city, come before the Planning and Zoning Commission and City Council and ask for this particular property to be platted into multiple residential lots. And the reason I bring this up is the current zoning, again, would allow for this. The subdivision of the property could result in, it's going to be a little bit less than 25 residential lots. And again, at 10 approximate trips per day per residential parcel, that's around 250 daily trips if the property were to be platted. So the trend of development in the vicinity of the subject property, there hasn't really been any type of infill development in this particular vicinity in some time. So the area directly adjacent to the property, no new development and no actual infill development in recent years. This would be the first major infill development on this stretch of Miller Road in some time. And finally, moving on to staff recommendation, staff does consider the proposed zoning map amendment, so rezoning from medium density single-family residential to this planned development district to be generally consistent with the goals and objectives of the comprehensive plan, generally consistent with the trend of development in the vicinity of the site, generally compatible with surrounding land uses, and is able to be adequately served by municipal facilities. Specifically, the proposed development can be adequately served by water and sewer, stormwater included, and the city's transportation network. So Miller Road can adequately serve the increase in trips generated by the proposed development. Of course, our staff recommendation is based off the application itself and not any additional testimony or evidence provided at the public hearing. And I'll be happy to answer any questions that the commission might have.
Did you say 126 trips was what the engineers stated?
Yes.
Or
So
148?
148.
148.
So in the back of your packet, second to last page, I believe, maybe third to last page, is a letter provided by CJW. So they've identified for this particular use the senior adult housing, independent housing. The approximate trip generation on any weekday is 148. And our city engineer did review this report and does concur that 148 seems appropriate in the context of what the trip generation manual does allow.
Okay. So, and that explains for like the difference in a single house or a single family dwelling equaling 10, but an individual unit equaling somewhere around 4. Does that sound right?
Yeah,
Because-
a single family residential under the ITE manual is approximately 10 trips generated per day.
And this is 40 dwellings. That's why I asked.
There is a reduction in the ITE manual for senior living, so seniors typically don't drive as much. That's why that rate is less.
Okay. Does anybody else have any questions for the city?
Whenever they're done doing this, what is planned development district? Does it become anything else, or is it always going to be PDD?
No, if approved by City Council, the property will be rezoned to Planned Development District. So there'll be a Planned Development District for Miller Street senior living. So until the applicant or someone that has an ownership interest in the parcel asks to come back before the commission and back before City Council for rezoning, this PDD will stay in effect for forever, essentially. So someone would have to, again, ask for it to be rezoned in order for, any of this to change to a different zoning district.
Are these closer to rentals, or are they owned homes?
No, we did clarify that with the applicant, and he could provide further clarification that these will be rental units. And I do want to point out, we did have some last-minute information that was included. It was not included in your packet, but it was included on your clipboard. So there is a letter from the applicant. And then we also included a copy of the deed restriction that gives very specific language regarding the residents of the proposed community being 55 years and older. So if it is approved by City Council, that'll become a part of the permanent record. And the deed restriction itself would also be a document that's recorded and would run with the land and not a specific owner.
I didn't know if there was different parking requirements for apartments versus residential.
There are. If this were, if the request before you were for a R3 or multifamily district, the requirements would be 2 per dwelling unit. So it would be, substantially higher, almost double from the parking spaces that are included as part of this plan. But the actual reduction in parking with that 55 plus restriction and the number of trips that have shown to be generated as significantly less than a typical dwelling unit makes sense.
Thank you.
So any other questions for the city? I'm going to open the public hearing. At this point, any public comment in favor of the application, please come to the podium.
My name is Gabriel Woodman with Merrick Development Group. I'm located at 1055-1 West Larosa Lane in Springfield, Missouri, 65802. First off, I just want to say thanks for taking the time to look at our proposal. Also want to thank staff for all the help with PUD. So, America as a nation is aging. We have a shit ton of population. And eventually, 1 in every 5 citizens will be above 65 and older. Our demographic is 55 and older. So our demographic will be, for our property, will be even greater than projections are showing. But this just gives you a little bit of insight on the type of movement we have with our population in the U.S. Today and going forward up into 2050. And at 2050, we will have double our 65 and older citizens in the U.S. So from this point until 2050, the demand that Republic sees will actually double, or the demographic that would be, wanting to rent these units will actually double from here on out. Baby boomers, specifically, so I'm talking about economic benefit, specifically for the city and businesses in the area. Baby boomers specifically represents more than 70% of the U.S. financial assets and over 50% of the discretionary spending. So, baby boomers are moving into the 65 and older demographic. I think 2030, baby boomers, every single baby boomer will be 65 and over. So, 2020, every single baby boomer will be a demographic that our property would serve. So, accrued benefits for senior citizens is a big deal because a lot of people think that fixed incomes are a detriment to people, but seniors, they know where their next check is coming, where it's coming from. So, and these numbers are quantifiable. We know how much people have in their 401ks. It's public data and their Social Security. So, the spending habits of these people they don't fluctuate as much as they would with families. And so this is a tax benefit to the city. Without affordable housing and quality affordable housing in Republic, especially with the age of our stock, Republic could really miss out on opportunity, specifically with the growth and the demographic that we'll be serving. Right now, it's an exciting time for affordable housing. We've got a new tool, it's income averaging, and it allows us to serve a broader spectrum of this demographic that I spoke about previously. A lot of times people, they either make too much or they don't make enough, and so we can capture more of those residents and more people can qualify. Our preliminary capture rate is 11.8%. Your capture rate normally, for people that don't know, needs to be lower. This is a pretty good capture rate, and what it means is the approximate unit demand for our type of property, the 55 and older and affordable, is approximately 400 unit demand. That's just for the public PMA. So it's obvious, having numbers on how many units we have, but just our housing authority has around 100 units. So it's obvious that Republic has a large shortage in senior units. The current housing stock, first I want to just commend the housing authority because they've done an excellent job with the properties they have. A lot of times we go into cities and the housing authority has let the properties kind of go by the wayside, but our housing authority has done a really good job to take ownership of our properties and make them last as long as possible. But as of day, they're really outdated, and it's not just materials and things becoming old and breaking, but over 15, 20 years, the accessibility requirements that housing has been held up to has increased, and it's gotten better. And so when you don't have new units enter the market, you're really putting your seniors at a disadvantage because they have no accessible units that are up to today's standards. The other thing that our units in the market lack are a energy efficient unit. So going back to the discretionary spending for seniors when they have energy efficient units, their budgets aren't as tight, and it's a double-edged sword. They have more money to spend in the community. Eventually, we will be subject to interstate migration, which means that people won't be moving out of the state, but they will be moving within the state. And a lot of times that's due to housing shortages. So specifically, in this case, it would seem that Republic eventually, if not already, will be subject to interstate migration to somewhere that has a better stock of quality affordable housing. The proximity to healthcare, we are in a great location for healthcare. I mean, Springfield is essentially the medical mile, and so Merrick sees it as an opportunity for Republic to meet housing needs, and sees it as a priority for us, so that we can use the interstate migration as an actual strength. We'll actually pick up people because we have a better housing stock and it's affordable and quality. Karen kind of stole my thunder here, but the property will be 40 senior units, and like she said, it will be restricted to 55 and older. We believe the site location is pretty prime for a senior development. It has second-tier commercial by it with the Highway 60 corridor, and then it has other duplex residential developments in the area near P Highway. It's next to the recreational center, or it's down the street from it. It's approximate to it, and so it has classes, it has a place to walk, and so it's an existing amenity that a lot of times we have to create the amenities in the towns we go into, and so that particular property has an actual existing amenity in the recreational center. And we think that's great, and seniors, I know I've seen seniors there, so I know they'll take advantage of it.
Sir, before you move on to your next slide, we've hit
Okay.
well past the 5-minute point. So if there is a key slide that you would like to show
Gotcha.
the commissioner, that would be great.
Okay, so Karen already went over the traffic studies and the reduced parking. The other thing that we wanted to point out was the infrastructure. It's compatible with it, but it'll also be reduced in comparison to the present zoning. And then the loop drive, like Karen said, the loop drive, is a really good accessory to our developments. It provides a sense of community and privacy, and we just really like to do those. Our units will be subject to the National Green Building Standards, and so, and also we're going to save the clubhouse. We're going to save the historic house for the clubhouse. And then amenities, we're proposing a dog park. We're having a bench for oats. Essentially, we like to pride ourselves in having amenities that are at least the same as market rate, if not better. And to summarize, as Karen stated, our proposed use is cohesive with the surroundings. We believe it's the best use, specifically because of the reduce in burden on the infrastructure, and it gives a sense of community with the loop drive, and it is definitely walkable with the rec center, and then we are proposing unmatched amenities, and mainly it fulfills the growing need that the public has, and will continue to grow if not taken care of.
Thank you.
One question I have, since you submitted this today, I'm assuming you wanted as an exhibit for the commissioners, correct?
These slides?
Yes.
Yes. And I have copies of those. So I'll give them to you.
Does anybody have questions for the gentleman right now? Reserve the right to ask questions during commissioner questioners. Commissioners' questions.
Okay.
Yeah, if you don't care.
Sir, could you
I'm sorry.
come right back up to the podium, sir? Go ahead.
I was just curious if what kind of staff you might be considering having there for like clubhouse and stuff, and will the parking be sufficient for staff and visitors and whatnot?
Sure, yeah. I mean, one of the slides had a development we just finished, and it has two, regular parking spaces for the community building and one accessible parking space. It's plenty, really. We'll have an influx when we lease up, but it's definitely not all at once. And then we will have a full-time management staff, and then we'll have a part-time maintenance staff.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Where would they park on the overflow? Like when you said it's staffing, it's
Normally
filling up,
they would-
where would they park?
Seniors normally, as Karen has stated, seniors normally, that they're not particular to their cars like we are. So, a lot of seniors don't actually have a car, or they rely on, like the ride share system, or we have a oats bench for people to get the oats bus. So, a lot of our residents, if I had to estimate, probably a third of them don't actually have cars. So they would probably have to park in the residence.
But I would assume they would also have visitors too at some point.
Yeah, and so I mean, honestly, we haven't really quantified it, but 1 to 1, we have 1 parking per unit, and 4 more for the community or clubhouse has been a really good fit for us. I mean, we could probably do less, but 1 to 1, everybody has a parking space. It's normally sufficient. Like places like, urban areas like Kansas City and stuff like that, we'll do half.
Yeah, well, this is not Kansas City.
Correct. We have a farmhouse on the property. Yeah, got it.
Thank you. Any other questions for the gentleman?
Yeah, there's an apartment complex in Springfield that's 55 plus.
Mhm.
There's definitely kids that are 21 there.
Okay.
So, how are you guys going to go about making sure it is 55 plus and all that stuff?
This will be an affordable tax credit property. So we're held. I believe you're talking about Terra Vera.
It's on. Yeah, it's fine.
It's behind the new Come and Go.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that is not, I mean, from what I know, that is not an affordable taxpayer property. The reason why we have to build, even though we would like to build to a higher green standard, the reason we have to build to a high green standard, and we are perfectly okay with restricting our property 55 and older because we're used to it, is because we are held to a higher standard. And so our properties have to meet a compliance protocol. And so we're actually audited, at least on an annual basis. So I mean, a state agency, an arm of the state actually audits us.
If I may, the deed restriction that is included on your clipboard will restrict all residents to 55 and over. That was a qualifier for staff's recommendation for approval of this particular application.
Yeah, so with the market rate, you might have somebody that, the actual person who signed the lease is 55 and older.
I have a question that probably be best served for legal. If for whatever reason the applicant was to fail to meet those guidelines, what would be the potential corrective action for that?
They would all be legal actions. There's nothing administrative that we could do in this action. An abatement probably would not work, so most likely we would have to go to court, and we would have to file for some type of injunction either against the owner or the occupant who is violating this restricted covenant. So, the simple answer is, it's not going to be easy for the city to enforce it. The city was the one to enforce it. However, the owners of this property under the deed restriction also have an obligation to enforce it also. So first action would be on the owners of the property to enforce it. If they fail to enforce it, then it would come to the city to decide whether or not we're going to enforce it or not. It would also be a violation of the zoning ordinance also, because this is zoned as a PDD. Everything you're seeing here is part of the PDD. So if they violate that also, then that'd be a violation of our zoning ordinances. That would potentially subject the owner and any individual who has an ownership in that property to be issued a citation for a law violation and be issued a municipal court for the prosecutor, which is myself, also to prosecute the case. So.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions from the Is there any others here for public comment in favor of the application?
I'll just take a few minutes. I'm Dolph Woodman. I've been a resident of Republic, Missouri for over 30 years. That was my son. I think he did a good job. Just want to remind the council and the commissioners that Republic has not had a senior development in over 40 years. All of our seniors are having to leave their homes here where they've lived their whole life. They've had to go to Ozark, Springfield, or Nixa because this type of development has not been constructed here. So I just want to that's really all I want to say. And just one other thing about parking. We've been doing this for over 20 years, and most of our facilities will have 50% parking for seniors. Like the urban areas, some of them have even less than 50%. So we're not going to build something to where we don't have adequate parking for our residents. And we feel confident that one parking space plus the additional for guests and for our staff will be fine.
Thank you. Any other public comment in favor of the application, President? We'll move to public comment opposed to the application.
Could you put that slide? Oh, that one. That's fine. I live right directly next door where the white blob is. That's my garage. I live on the east side.
Right here.
Right there. Okay, a couple of concerns I have is with the parking. I'm 73 years old. I'll be 74 next month. So I consider myself a senior. I have a vehicle, my wife has a vehicle, she's 66. Everybody, I know a lot of older people, and they both, husband and wife both drive. I'm concerned there's so much traffic on Miller Road now, it's not even funny. You're all familiar with it. I'm also concerned with stormwater, where you had 5 acres of grass basically, and now it's going to be asphalt and concrete. Where's that water going? I know they're planning on corner of the property, of their property, of some kind of a catch basin for the water. I don't know how that works, so. But that property is a little higher than my property. Also, their property line runs very close to my house, and I'm not really looking forward to looking at a building when I get up in the morning. And I also understand they want to have a sign out in front that is lit. And I didn't realize that, the commercial business could plop down in the middle of a residential area. So basically, that's all I have to say. I'm not opposed to, I'm going to probably someday have to move to a senior, something different because of the yard work and stuff, but I'm just concerned with, a few concerns with mainly the parking, flood water, the noise, even though seniors don't make a lot of noise, most of them. But, you put 40 units, that's, if half of them are married, that's a lot of people in that area. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Sir, could you say your name real quick? I know you're filling out the card there, but.
Tom Welter. I've lived in that house for 21 years.
What's the address of your house, sir?
201 East Miller Road.
Thank you.
Any questions? Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Any other public comment opposed to the application?
My name is Leslie Forbes, and my husband Steve and I own the house at 115 East Miller Road. We built it 20 years ago, and the amount of traffic on Miller Road at times is almost unbearable. There are times that it's very hard to back out of our driveways. I'm not saying that this might not be a good idea for the City of Republic. I don't feel that this is the best location for it. I don't think multifamily living, or I don't know how to phrase it, basically apartments in the middle of a single family residential area is a really good idea. And I'm not sure if it's considered low income from just listening to the descriptions, but what's that going to do to our property values once this is in there? And talking about the cars, I'm 53. I personally own 2 vehicles. And with my husband and my daughter, we have 4 vehicles. So my mother-in-law is 75, she owns a car. So I think there's going to be more cars than what they're actually thinking. I know for the people who are interested in developing this property, it's a business, it's a way to make money. They have no emotional investment in this property, but these are our homes. These are where we've raised our families. This is where we've invested our hard-earned money. And I just want you to take that into consideration, if you would. And that's all.
Is there any questions? Thank you for your participation tonight.
My name's Nancy Forbes. I live at 540 South Main. That's on the corner of Main and Miller Road here in Republic. I've lived in this house for 50 years. We've gradually done things to our home to build it up to make it nice, where it's a nice, decent home. I've kept the yard up. I've mowed the side of the yard that the city's supposed to take care of, but I took care of it. I feel like we need to be heard. We're proud of our homes. It took us a long time to get there. By the time most of you are my age, you'll realize what I mean. We have such traffic there that I had to wait 10 minutes to back out of my driveway to get going to work. Many times it's close to that. We have such an influx of vehicles now. What's it going to be when all those others are pooled into this? How long are we going to have to wait? We don't feel like we should have to sacrifice what we have for someone else. We'll be happy to work with them, but we shouldn't have to sacrifice our things. I worry about the little kiddies, little babies, getting on and off the school bus. So much traffic. It's scary. It's nothing I want to see happen for one of them to get hurt. We have the Cox Health Center down the road from me. It's wonderful. It's a new addition to Republic. We have a lot of people that walk, run, whatever, on that sidewalk. How congested is that going to be for them now? They have their rights too to this town and its facilities. I just wanted to say, think this over real good before you vote on it, because you're touching people's lives. And like the sign says up here, vision, to grow together by always doing the right thing at the right time for the right reason. I have faith in the Republic. I've been here a long time. And I know you all do the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there any other public comment opposed to the application present?
My name is Betty North. I live at 733 O'Neill in Republic. My husband and I own property at 136 Ritter, which adjoins the north side of this property. And I love the vacant lot that is right next to it. I'm not sure. It might be 138. I'm not sure what that address is. I have several comments tonight. And I'm not a public speaker, and my knees are shaking. To start off with, I want to clarify something right now. She was talking about the FLUM. As I understand it, you guys can only consider what is already been approved and is a part of the city government. You can't consider what you are thinking about putting into the city ordinance. Is that true?
Are you talking about the flume?
The
Future
flume,
loop?
uh-huh.
No, I don't believe that's true, no. No.
Okay. The flume has not been adopted, is that right?
No, it has been adopted, yes, but they can consider other stuff that's in it. The flume does not consider everything that's part of what our zoning is, so it can be considered. This is a change to a zoning.
But it's not adopted yet.
This is a change to a zoning ordinance, so it will be, an ordinance can override another ordinance, and that's what this is. This will be an ordinance for zoning.
Okay. I have a couple of quick comments that, these are not my comments, they're things that I read. It said, once a land use plan is adopted, inconsistency with the land plan is strongly indicates a finding of arbitrariness or of spot zoning. I consider this to be spot zoning. Care should be taken to consider the impact on adjoining properties because rezoning and planning decisions are interrelated. Every inquiry by a municipality into such instance should be a factual one as to whether the requested rezoning takes into account the specific recommendations for the target property. Another thing that I read, when a developer requests greater density, for example, to make the numbers work, the developer may have created his own hardship by paying too much for the land he seeks to develop. A city should not be obligated to underwrite investments or guarantee profits in real estate. This parcel of land, in my opinion, is not appropriate for a planned development district, and the proposed zoning is not consistent with your current comprehensive plan. To simplify the discussion regarding the rezone request, there is one compelling question that you should consider. Does this proposed land use conform to the city's land use plan that is currently a part of the comprehensive plan? Now, as I understand it, this is part of the current plan. Is that correct?
I can't see what you're holding up.
Okay, it's in the packet. This is the planned use.
This is the current zoning map, and this is the future land use map.
Okay, the current zoning map is the one I'm referring to. Okay, it has single-family residential for the entire, well, practically the entire map is single-family residential. And this rezoning that you're talking about does not conform to that map because you're putting a planned development, which is primarily apartments, right smack dab in the middle of all the single-family residents. To me, that makes it spot zoning, and that should not be allowed. All the medium-density family, all around is medium-density family. Why have a land use plan if you are going to violate it? Don't start down a slippery slope by approving this development. I feel multifamily apartments are not generally compatible with the surrounding properties as stated in the staff recommendation in the packet. Also, your packet talks about land use goals regarding infill development. I have no problem with infill development as long as the infill development is compatible with the existing homes. In this case, it is not. In this case, it would be single-family homes with low density. Please consider the character of the neighborhood when you're considering this rezone. It is in the public interest and the public good to maintain the current zoning, as this will show the citizens of Republic that the city makes decisions based on the land use plan, not allowing arbitrary rezoning decisions. Also, I think this rezoning request should be denied because it is not appropriate for this property based on the criteria listed in the purpose and intent section of the Plan Development Ordinance. And you have in your packet this ordinance right here that I'm going to be referring to. Please review the document with me. The request for the PDD, Plan Development, for apartments does not meet the purpose and intent of allowing for unconventional and innovative arrangement of land use. What is innovative about the proposal other than creating the most densely populated 5-acre parcel in the city of Republic? It is 100% surrounded by single family. This is a request for multifamily housing in sheep's clothing. The PDD request is for the sake of mere convenience to get around conventional regulations involved in multifamily land developments. Could a simple variance have solved any problems with single-family zoning for this parcel? Contrary to the purpose outlined in city ordinances, this development is contrary to the purpose outlined in the city ordinance. Did the developer provide evidence that he could not develop this property into single-family homes? It is inappropriate to rezone the property using a PD designation in order to get higher density and avoid conventional regulations. Item number 4 in your regulations. This development does not meet the criteria listed regarding undue concentration of population and overcrowding of land. This development, in my opinion, should be considered super dense and definitely overcrowded the land. 40 housing units on 5 acres. That's an average of 8 units of housing per acre. Most of the development in the surrounding area probably averages 2 to 3 housing units per acre. Please look at item number 2 on your sheet. This planned development does not promote the public interest and a sense of community within the surrounding area. The PDD is closed off to the surrounding area with no integration. The criteria number 3. Again,
before and I'm going to let you continue, just in terms of fairness of how long I let the applicant provide, I will ask that probably limit in about 2 more minutes.
Okay.
Thank you, ma'am.
Again, the PDD does not conform to the comprehensive plan. So I feel the rezone application does not meet the comprehensive plan criteria or the plan development criteria, either one. Not the comprehensive plan and not the plan development criteria. Parts of the city ordinance dealing with land development talk a great deal about green space, especially with land developments. Look at the plans for this development and consider how much of the property will be covered with structures, sidewalks, streets, and 44 parking spots. Where's the green space compared to the amount of impervious surface area? Once again, this proposed development does not conform to the spirit and intent of a planned development land use. It is in the public interest and the public good to maintain the current zoning, as this will show the citizens of Republic that the city makes decisions based on the land use plan, not allowing arbitrary rezoning decisions, which use a planned development as a vehicle to rezone property. I do think we need senior housing. I do not think we need senior housing on this piece of property. It's totally inappropriate to locate it here. You You must consider the adaptability of the subject property to the zone request that they have asked for. Consider the effect of the zoning on property value in assessing the private detriment. What about public benefit, you might ask? There are things that are relevant to the determination of public benefit: the character of the neighborhood, the zoning of nearby property, and the detrimental effect that a change in zoning would have on other property in the area. The adaptability of the subject property to its zone use is another factor for consideration.
Ma'am, is there any final statement that you'd like to make?
I think that's it. The development does not meet the criteria listed,
Thank you.
so it should be turned down.
Thank you for your participation tonight. Is there anyone that has any specific questions for her right now? Okay. Thank you, ma'am. I appreciate it. Is there any other representatives, public comment opposed to the application?
I am Jennifer Mitchell. I live on 275 East Republic Road, and I am actually just to the right of Tom, and that we have about 6 acres of land there. And I'm a business owner, so I come in with that. I see there's vision, and I see their vision, and I see there's a necessity for senior housing living, so I don't want to rain on that parade. So I applaud you guys as a business owner. I get that. You see a need and you want to fill it. I just agree with them. I don't feel like it's the appropriate location as far as putting that in the heart of Miller Road, that community. It's a very community feel on that road. So I just sense that would change that feel of Miller and create just a lot of chaos and kind of take away from that feel and from the beauty of it. Honestly, I wish it could stay fields forever, but it cannot. So change is always hard, and so, I mean, just know our heart changes is hard for us to see that change into anything. But just as you guys being our voice, just taking into consideration us who live there and our heart for that community and that road. I don't know if what we say will affect your decision, but we are just placing our trust in you guys and what's best for Republic and what's best for the development of that land. But again, I just feel like it could be suitable for other purposes.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Any other public comment opposed to the application? Thank you. Commissioners, added questions? For the city, for anyone opposed or in favor of the application? I'm going to close the public hearing at this point. Any conversation amongst the commissioners? I would like to point out the planning and zoning, and I'm going to go back to the minutes or the meeting procedures and exactly explaining what the Planning and Zoning Commission does. In terms, we base our decision on facts and evidence that is provided. I am going to once again point out that there is a city council meeting at 6:30 on November 27th. That's a Tuesday. There won't be a public hearing. However, all of you have the ability to reach out to your city councilman with any questions or concerns about this. But in terms of a planning and zoning commission, we do have to base our decisions on facts and evidence provided and testimony for and against an application. So at that point, do I have a motion to to affirm application. Go ahead. Thank you.
I'll motion for affirmation.
Motion for affirmation. Do I have a second motion for affirmation?
I'll second it.
I have a second. Call for the vote, please.
Cynthia Hyder. Can I abstain?
Is there a reason for you to abstain?
This is my first, meeting. I was just appointed. And there's a lot to this one. There's a lot that I don't really feel comfortable voting on it. Does that make sense? Do you need something more?
An abstention is when you have some type of conflict of interest, or some other reason that you cannot vote on this. I don't believe you had that, and normally a vote is required of a council member, a commissioner, whoever's appointed, so. I can't force you to vote, but
No.
normally a vote is required, so I don't see a conflict of interest.
Okay. I'll vote in favor.
I vote.
Barry Pedersen.
Aye.
Tony Mitchell. Kevin Hahn.
Aye.
Brandon Andrews.
Aye. Motion passed. At this point, we're going to move on to citizen participation based on anything outside of the above three motions that we have heard from today. Do we have any citizen participation at this point in the meeting? At this point, I'm going to close citizen participation and move on to the Community Development Departmental update.
Thank you. Connie, could you switch it to the updates folder? If you'll load both of those, please. I have included on your clipboard 2 additional items. We're going to run through those really quickly. So one of the things that the Community Development Department will start reporting on to the Commission is both the results of various types of applications that you actually see throughout the year. So we'll report on a monthly basis the results of those applications, and then also general projects that have come before the technical review team. And again, this technical review team, we are staff members comprised of the planning department, building department, fire, and then public works, engineering, surveying, water, sewer, and streets. We review both land use applications, the ones that you'll see on a monthly basis, and then also all commercial development applications. That team will also review various ordinance amendments and such. So the first sheet that you're going to see with the various colors, the technical review team project status report. The first item is all the different commercial development projects that we've completed in 2018, or that we've touched essentially in 2018. I've color-coded it so you can see we have a substantial number that have actually been completed. So those projects have been finished and received a certificate of occupancy and are now actually operating in capacity. We have a couple permits that are waiting to be picked up. A good number of permits that are in some stage of construction right now, and then blue indicate the items that are currently in review by the TRT. The next section is the land use cases. So these are the rezonings. We can see all rezonings have been approved except for the one at 1101 East Elm Street. That was from the residential medium density to the commercial office institutional zoning district. We've had 3 PDDs to to date in 2018. The first one, Trails of Valley Park, was approved. The second one was actually withdrawn before ever came before your review, and then this latest one. We've had one special use permit, which is the one that we saw this evening. Excuse me. Multiple subdivision and infrastructure construction permits. So typically, you're going to see the preliminary plat at the very beginning stage. So very similar to what you saw on our first case. Once that gets through the process and is approved by City Council, it then comes back with all of the details of construction of various types of infrastructure, so water mains, sewer mains, stormwater systems, and then streets. Those details are reviewed by the technical review team in the form of construction documents. We then issue a construction infrastructure permit, allowing that developer to go in there, grade the land, install the various systems, install the streets, and then get to the point where everything's finalized. A final plat is then put together, and then that is seen for final approval before City Council. So we have several that are in multiple different stages. We have a couple in construction, a couple waiting state permits, and a couple that are in review right now. Multiple minor subdivisions, so these could be replats, these could be just lot line adjustments or the subdivision. I think the last one we had was an 18-acre parcel, and they subdivided it into a 15-acre parcel and a 3-acre parcel. So those types of items would be minor subdivisions. We've had a couple right-of-way vacations and or acceptances. A couple have been withdrawn. The Miller Crossing and the Laborde application were seen before the Planning and Zoning Commission, and then also approved by City Council later on. A couple of ordinance updates, and then a couple more that staff is actually reviewing. So we'll provide you with a report similar to this each month that we have a Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. So just so you kind of know what's going on as far as land use cases, the results of those cases, and then all of the various types of commercial development throughout the city. If you have any questions, send me an email or give me a call. I'll be happy to discuss those projects. And the final item on your clipboard is the Residential Building and Inspection Project Report. So again, this is from January 1st until the 31st of October for this year. It does summarize the number of residential permits. So these are for new residential permits for homes that have been permitted in 2018 to date. So you can see to date we've had 102, each divided by the month in which they were issued. The second area on this sheet is the building inspections. Our building inspectors broke that down into residential inspections and commercial inspections by month. So you can see, typically we have more residential inspections than we do commercial, but a substantial number of inspections so far. So I would be happy to answer any questions regarding this also. This will be just a short update we provide to you on a monthly basis, so you know exactly the types of permits and quantity of permits and development that are happening in the city. And again, I'll be happy to answer any of those questions.
Any questions for the city? Going to move on to the comprehensive plan update.
I would like to report that I will not be reporting.
Fair enough, fair enough. At this point, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn the meeting. Motion. Motion, do I hear a second? Second. All in favor of adjournment?
Aye.
Do I need to call the votes?
Tony Mitchell.
Aye.
Brandon Andrews.
Aye.
Eric Pedersen.
Aye.
Kevin Hahn. Aye. Cynthia Hyder.
Meeting adjourned.
Yes, please. Please provide your findings of fact.